Congress to serve as a soldier. She's somebody that doesn't follow the current. She speaks up, and she has the strength to do that. And I believe it could be a very strong voice at the White House to be able to become a beacon of democracy and decency at the White House. So I'm very grateful with Representative and candidate Tulsi Gabbard to join us here at Hudson Democrats. We are very grateful, and we run with an applause to her, to welcome her to be with us today here. I have been talking in Spanish all day, and I am stuck with the language. And as a token of appreciation for you being with us here, we want to give you this T-shirt that we did for, yes, that is New Hampshire, first in the nation. Okay. Thank you. If there is something you couldn't understand what I said, I can explain that to you later on.
Muchas gracias. Can we give Alejandro a round of applause, please? Thank you, Alejandro, for your kind introduction and for your leadership here in Hudson County. Is Grace here as well? Grace, there you are. Sorry I missed you on the way in. Nice shirt. We'll be matching. Thank you both. I don't know, how many of you were here when we were supposed to be here last time, but there was, I was sick. This was right after the debate, right? I had gotten a bad cough, and so some of you had gathered. Raise your hands if you were here for that last one. All right, a couple of you, where I Skyped in from Atlanta, right? I think we were in Atlanta. Thank you for doing that, and thanks for being able to continue, and thanks to all of you for coming out here tonight. I really, really appreciate it. I want to say thanks to our hosts here. Josh Booley and his dad, Ray, are in the back. Thanks for inviting us and giving us this space to gather together. And Justin, who's part of the team there, thank you so much. And Ray, thank you for your service to our country and the United States Navy. We have an incredible group of volunteers who are here today, and there are too many to list by name, but I'm so proud of the campaign that we have and the people-powered campaign that we're building. We take no PAC money, we take no lobbyist money, and really we are fueled and being moved by our volunteers who are working hard every day. If our volunteers, can you just raise and wave your hands? There we go, they're all gathered in the back, working hard. Thank you. I'm really, really grateful. It's gathering together in spaces like this with people like you across this country that gives me so much hope for our future, because we are the change. You know, there's a reason why our founding fathers chose those three most important words to begin our Constitution, we the people. For two reasons, right? So that we, the people, would never forget the responsibility that we have to be actively engaged and informed and involved in this democracy, but also so that the leaders who we choose to elect never forget who they are supposed to be serving. We, the people. And so as we look at the many challenges that we face, as we talk through how we want to solve these problems, I think it is most important that we stay focused on what this is all about, who it's really for. It's about every single one of you. It's about your children. It's about your loved ones, your neighbors, your community, our country as a whole. About 161 years ago, Abraham Lincoln gave a speech that was entitled, "A House Divided Against Itself Cannot Stand." And during that time, I was just going back and reading about what was surrounding him at that time as he delivered this speech, and many of his colleagues were telling him that this was very controversial. It was not a speech he should deliver, but he delivered it to deliver a warning about how divisive things were then. But I think it speaks very loudly and clearly to us as a country as we look at the challenges we face today. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And sadly, this is exactly where we are as a country. Our country is deeply divided, whether it be based on partisan lines, one group voting for this party or this person, another group voting for a different party or a different person, or if it's based on racial lines, ethnic, religious, all of these different things that are unfortunately being used to tear us apart and divide us. When that actually goes counter to the vision that our founders had for our country, you know, as they were working through a lot of divisions, as they were trying to heal this nation and bridge these divides, recognizing that as we have very different ideas about how to solve problems, as we come from different places in our own experiences, in our backgrounds, our family stories, that ultimately we are strong when we stand together. When we, every one of us, are firmly rooted in that foundation of our Constitution that serves as the bedrock for our country, so that we can remember that our objective really is the same. You know, we're gathered here together today, as many people are in different parts of the country, because we care. We care for each other, we care for our country, and we care for the future, our future. Not only for the one that lies before us, but the one that we will leave behind for those who come after us. And it is this focus and this care that allows us to see past so much of the divisiveness and instead have the dialogue and the conversation built on this foundation of respect that we really need to have to solve problems, to work side by side, to build this brighter future. As Alejandro said, to make sure that our country, our White House, can once again become a beacon of light, of hope, of opportunity, of respect. These things are so important that we cannot take for granted. And we are the only ones that can make this happen. We are the only ones who can bring about this change. Some critics will come to me and express their cynicism about, is this really possible? I spoke to a college student not long ago, or she just actually graduated from college, and she told me that she didn't think it was. That the lines are so deeply drawn in the sand of one side against the other side, that Washington is so divided. It is such a hyper-partisan environment that she didn't see how it's possible for us to be able to come together again, because increasingly year after year, it just keeps getting worse. Who here disagrees with this? You don't think our country is divided?
Oh, no, I think we can.
It is, but we can't, right, you agree that we can fix it.
I disagree with the college.
There you go. You disagree with the college student. Got it. I was about to try to understand, well, where are you living? No. But you're right, though. You're right. And this was the conversation that I had with her, and it made me sad that she had lost all hope that we could come together as a future because of how bad it's become. But you are right, and this is what I conveyed to her, is that number one, failure is not an option. And this was how Abraham Lincoln closed that speech about a house divided against itself cannot stand. He said, "We shall not fail. If we stand firm, we shall not fail." And that we that he's talking about is we the people. It's we the people. We are the ones who will bring about this change, both in selecting who we want to see leading our country, leaders who will put service above self, who will put the interests of the American people and our country above all else, leaders who will treat each other with respect and inspire this positive change within our country at the highest levels and within our communities, remembering who we all are as Americans, what it is that connects us, this common ground that we stand upon in this country, in the United States of America. Now, where I come from in Hawaii, we have a word, aloha. It is a word that is often mistakenly understood to mean hello and goodbye, but it means neither. Someone said, well, hey, I was in second grade, and my teacher told me that word meant hello and goodbye. Are you telling me she was wrong? I said, yeah, unfortunately, she was wrong. But it's a word we use to greet each other, both in the beginning of conversations and when we are leaving, because of its really, really special, powerful meaning. What aloha means really is I come to you with respect, that I come to you with an open heart, with care and compassion, and seeing each other for who we really are, seeing each other as brother and sister, as family, as children of God, as people who are all connected. And therefore, then, as we are having our conversations, as we are living our lives and our relationships personally and professionally, that we are able to see past all of these differences that can sometimes get in the way of real dialogue and conversation. And this is something that I've done my best just to live by in my own life, to lead with, and to bring to Washington. We need a lot of aloha in Washington. It's something that can and must be applied in a very practical way. So I want to share with you a story of how I did that in a very practical way. I knew going into Washington as a new freshman Democrat being elected in 2012, a strong Republican majority in the House of Representatives, very partisan environment, and trying to think about, okay, how can I practice this aloha in my work in Congress? How can I begin to reach out with respect to my colleagues, start to build these relationships necessary for me to do my job, the job that I was hired to do by my constituents in Hawaii, to serve them, to deliver results for them. It would be easy to just turn my back and just say, well, hey, the other team's in charge, so I'm just gonna hunker down and hang out with my team and just work hard until we get enough seats in Congress to win, and then think about how we can get things done. That probably would have been the easier path to take, but it was not the right path to take, because that's not why I ran for Congress, and that's not why people voted for me. They voted for me to do a job, to serve them, to work for them, to be their voice in Washington. And so I had an idea in how to begin to do this outreach. I called my mother in Hawaii, who makes this incredible macadamia nut toffee. And I thought, what better way than speaking through the universal language of food to be able to open some hearts and begin to establish these relationships. So I asked her if she would make 434 boxes of her toffee. No big deal, right? My mother, she and my dad just celebrated 51 years of marriage yesterday. They raised 5 kids. I know it's a rare thing these days. And so my mom thought it was a great idea. She said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in. I want to help. I said, I actually have one more favor to ask. And for all of the moms in here, you know that no matter how old your children get, they're always calling home, right? Saying, hey, Mom, I need some help. I asked if she would make another 435 bigger boxes of toffee for the staff of every member of Congress. And again, she's an amazing woman. She paused, I think, only just to start processing how much longer that would take her, how many more pounds of macadamia nuts she would need, but she understood why it was important. So she got to work in Hawaii. She's stirring both pots of toffee at the same time, chopping the mac nuts, pouring the toffee. She had my dad assisting her in the job he chose for himself, which was to be the quality control officer, supervising and taking a slice out of every single pan that she poured. I'm not even joking. And while they were doing this and wrapping the toffee in Hawaii, I was just handwriting personal notes to every one of my new colleagues, going online, looking up information, seeing what their backgrounds were, just getting better informed about who they are, and signing every one of these notes saying, I look forward to serving with you. The incredible thing was that as we began to deliver these little gifts of aloha, how quickly I got a response that on the House floor, as we are there casting votes, it's the only time that all 435 of us are in the same room at the same time, that members of Congress who I normally would not have the opportunity to work with, chairmen and women of important committees in Congress, started to make that long walk across the House floor from the Republican side to the Democrat side, finding me and just saying thank you. Thank you. Many of them saying, I ate all the candy, I need more before I can go home this weekend. And then most importantly, asking me, tell me what issues your constituents are concerned about. You know, what are the things that you're coming here that you want to tackle? I'm the chair of this committee or that committee. This is what I've been working on, or how many years I've been involved in this or that. Let's work together. I want to help. That simple gesture of reaching out with aloha, with respect, without preconditions, without purity tests, without picking and choosing, well, I'll talk and work with this person, but not that person. Reaching out with respect to everyone, focused on this mission that we all share together of service, of putting service above self, putting the interests and the well-being of the American people ahead of politics, ahead of profits, ahead of special interests and corporations, putting the well-being of the people of our country first. And it was because of this outreach, this laying a foundation based on respect, that I've been able to be very effective throughout my 7 years in Congress, where at a time with a strong Republican majority, I was able to actually pass legislation, something that a lot of people said was impossible, that I shouldn't even waste my time trying to do from the beginning. That, you know, when introducing amendments to, you know, some of the larger bills that get through Congress, being told, well, hey, look, Republicans will never support it, don't even try. And the leadership opposing my bill or my amendment, it's because of those relationships that I had my phone calls returned. That when I'm texting my colleagues saying, hey, my bill's coming up for a vote, I need your support, they would respond and say, okay, tell me why. Instead of just going along with the party line, which is often what happens in Washington. If it's a Republican bill, Republicans vote for it, Democrats vote against it. It's a Democrat bill, Democrats vote for it, Republicans vote against. That's the norm, rather than every member of Congress looking at the substance of each piece of legislation and saying, okay, what are the pros and cons? Will this help people or will this hurt people? So instead of just towing the party line, I was able to have these conversations where my colleagues knew and trusted, because of this relationship, that I would tell them the truth. I would make my case, that I wasn't going to try to screw them over or set them up for failure. And no, not every single one of them came my way. But on many of these cases, I was able to convince enough people, making the case based on the substance of my legislation, to support it, because it was the right thing to do. This is the leadership that I will bring as your President and Commander-in-Chief. Reaching across the aisle, treating every single American with respect, not seeing one group of Americans as part of my team and the rest as deplorables, seeing every single American with respect, and bringing about the kind of leadership that puts your well-being and your interests ahead of all else every single day. As we go on here, we have our volunteers. They're going to pass around some gold-wrapped macadamia nut toffee, my mom's recipe. So you can get a little taste of how my colleagues felt when I first got elected, and and the magic of this stuff. It's dangerously addictive, so you've been warned. But this is what we're talking about at a very practical level. And this is what I shared with that college student about how we can and must move forward together, and how I will lead as president, not accepting failure as an option, being inspired by the example of Abraham Lincoln and so many other leaders who have come before us, facing very difficult challenges and divisive times, but always leading with love and with care and compassion and putting the well-being and the interests of the American people above all else. Now, there's a lot of different issues that we will tackle together. As president, I will take on and hold to account Big Pharma, those who are perpetrating this opioid epidemic across our country, those who have lied and cheated and intentionally deceived people just to make more money, ruining people's lives, taking people's lives in the process. I've introduced legislation that begins this process, the Opioid Accountability Act, that would hold those responsible accountable and would take the fines and the dollars that would come from these cases and earmark them specifically for those survivors of this epidemic to help them through recovery, to help provide those desperately needed resources to those who are struggling with abuse and addiction to get the help that they need as they walk this long path towards recovery. I will hold Big Pharma and Big Insurance accountable and take them away from the policy-making table. When you look at so many of the pieces of legislation related to our health care that have come before Congress, you see in this pay-to-play culture in Washington how their high-powered and high-paid lobbyists have a tremendous amount of influence over the legislation that affects our everyday lives. I want to take the opportunity to recognize AARP, who's here. I'm so grateful that at almost every meeting we have, and I know other campaigns as well, there are AARP volunteers who are coming with your red shirts and jackets. And I just love the message. I don't know if you want to just stand up so people can see you here for a second. And I can give you the mic if you want to say a word or two. Thank you. But you see her jacket, it says Stop Greed. You are everywhere, and you are a nonpartisan organization fighting for people. Exactly, exactly. It says stop greed, lower. Exactly, now. Stop the greed. And your message is so crystal clear because it cuts to the heart of what is wrong with our entire healthcare system now. It's being driven by greed and profits rather than, hey, how do we better take care of our people? Whether it's our grandparents, our parents, us, our children, at every single age. And so when we have these conversations in our community about how we can improve healthcare, the number one thing we've got to do is take away the crony capitalism and the greed that has infected this healthcare system that unfortunately really isn't about healthcare at all, really. It's sick care, right? We're not placing a high level of importance on prevention and wellness and doing more to be able to encourage a healthier society and prevent people from getting sick in the first place. So you have, every one of you have my personal commitment that in a Gabbard administration, Big Pharma and Big Insurance will have no seat at our table as we are forming the healthcare policies that will guarantee quality healthcare for every single American, that will allow those who, if you have a great private insurance or if your employer is offering one, if you choose to go down that route, obviously you should have that choice. But for the single mom of 4 who I met earlier today just across the road or just down the way at Cookie's Cafe, whose son is 25 years old, was born with severe disabilities, and who needs a lung transplant, he doesn't know if he can get it because they've got to come up with $30,000. He is on Medicare, he is on Medicaid. They're going to cover the cost just of the surgery itself, but all the other things that he needs around the surgery to make sure it's successful, 35 grand. 35 grand. So, you know, her boss, they got a donation can out there, the community to chip in. They're trying to get people together to make sure that this young man's life can be saved, but they don't know if they can raise it. I asked her, I said, well, do you have a GoFundMe page? Because I'd love to help spread the word. I'd love to get more people to chip in, whether it's 20 bucks or whatever you can. And you know what she told me? No, we're not allowed to do that, because if we have a GoFundMe page, they'll count those dollars as income, and he will lose his apartment and he will lose his health care. So the predicament that this young man is in, and his mother, who is so worried sick about his ability to live and be able to breathe properly and get this lung transplant, points to the corruption and the problem within our healthcare system. People like her and her son and so many families across our country should be able to live with the peace of mind that when you're at that most difficult moment in your life, when you or your loved one needs care, that you'll be able to get it. No matter where you work, or what your zip code is, or what your family background is, or the color of your skin. None of these things should stand in the way of us as Americans living in the greatest and wealthiest nation in the world to be able to ensure quality health care for every person. There are, thank you. Thank you. I want to be able to open it up to questions here. I want to hear what's on your mind in just a few moments, so I will wrap up, sir. We will come to you first. As I know, we'll be able to talk about many of the other challenges, whether it's climate change, immigration reform, criminal justice reform. There's a lot of other issues that we need to address. I do want to close on one issue that is central to all of these other issues, and that is the cost of war. Foreign policy is domestic policy, yet very rarely in this presidential campaign, or even campaigns in the past, do you see a major focus on foreign policy, which doesn't make sense for two big reasons. Number one is the most important responsibility the president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. I would think as voters, you would want to be best informed about who is most qualified to serve as commander-in-chief, right? And number two, those decisions that are made related to our foreign policy have direct impacts on every single one of us in our everyday lives, whether you realize it or you're confronted with it or not. Now, I've served as a soldier now in the Army National Guard for almost 17 years. I have deployed twice to the Middle East. My first deployment in a medical unit where every single day we were confronted with the terribly high human cost of war. I've served in Congress now for 7 years, going on 8. And throughout this time, I've served on the Homeland Security Committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, gaining experience and understanding related to our national security and foreign policy, and seeing firsthand who actually benefits most from our country's long-standing policy of waging regime change wars, toppling dictators, follow-on nation-building missions. It is not our country that benefits. Our national security is most often undermined as terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda are strengthened. It's the military-industrial complex and a lot of fancy Washington consultants who make a whole lot of money off of this continued policy. The cost of war takes a toll on every one of us as Americans because we are the ones who are paying the price. Just in Afghanistan alone, right now, we are paying $4 billion a month. $4 billion a month. So it begs the question, what are we getting for our money? What are we trying to accomplish? That's $5.5 million an hour. $5.5 million an hour going towards a war and nation building mission that some of the highest leaders in the Pentagon, now it's been revealed behind closed doors, they're scratching their heads saying, what are we even doing there? What are we trying to accomplish? What does quote unquote winning look like? And they can't answer that question. I've long advocated for bringing our troops home from Afghanistan, to stop wasting American taxpayer dollars there in wars, regime change wars and nation building missions there, and instead redirect those dollars towards serving the needs of our people in our communities, nation building right here at home. This is the change that I will bring about as president, getting our priorities straight, ending these regime change wars, ending these nation building missions, this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, taking care of our veterans and making sure that we are redirecting our taxpayer dollars right here at home. We need a commander-in-chief who will make the right decisions to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people and our country. And I bring the experience necessary that's prepared me to do that job on day one. Every single one of us pays the price for war. Now, I'm not a pacifist. I don't live in a dreamland. I live in the real world where I understand that unfortunately sometimes war may be necessary to protect and defend the American people. But as commander-in-chief, I will lead and maximize all diplomatic measures, building relationships with other countries, leading with cooperation rather than conflict, making sure that if we're sending my brothers and sisters into harm's way, that we are sending them on missions that are truly worthy of their great sacrifice, and that war should always be the last resort. If you agree with this leadership that we need in our country, then I want to personally invite every single one of you here to join me, to join our campaign, to join this movement towards this bright future where we are served by a government that is truly of, by, and for the people. Thank you very much. We'll open it up to questions now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a couple people walking around with a microphone. We'll start here with you, sir.
Good afternoon. I've been looking over the chessboard, and it seems that Trump won in Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin with a minority of the vote. He won by 11,000 votes in Michigan, while the Libertarians got 16 times that number of votes.
In Michigan?
In Michigan.
I did not know that.
If the Libertarians had been allowed in the presidential debates, then the Libertarians, two former Republican governors, probably would have taken more votes away from Trump, and the Democrats may have wound up winning in those states. Now, if you find an organization that would sponsor, that would run presidential debates and allow the Libertarians to participate and invite the Republicans, if they choose or not to, I like that chess move because it gets Donald Trump out of the White House, anyone but Trump, and because it would allow the Libertarians to present their solutions to more voters. And I think you would like that chess move because it would help get you elected.
Fair enough.
Is there a question?
Thank you. What's your name, sir?
I'm Tom Alseer.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Look, I think I want to get to kind of the heart of the issue that you're raising, which is that we need a fair and impartial system that allows for more than just the two parties to be represented, and that we allow voters to be able to hear the voices of those who are seeking to serve our country. I think that the concentration of power that exists within these two parties that's really fueled by money does a disservice to the American people in a lot of ways, as we see how that imbalance of power exists, and the negative consequences that come from that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You know, you say everything about foreign policies and everything else. Well, I'm a truck driver, and I've been doing that for 34 years. What do you think about the autonomous trucks that are coming out and the whole industry, in the trucking industry? It's really falling apart.
Yeah, thank you. I have grave concerns about what the impacts of this automation revolution will have. Look, I think that there's not any one single answer to this. I personally think there are a lot of safety concerns and other issues related to these changes. It seems like it's a matter of time, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on this, that it's not really a matter of if, but when at this point, and that we as a country need to be best prepared to empower those who are in a situation like yourself, maybe those who haven't been driving their whole careers but are deep into that right now and their family depends on that income to be able to survive, about what happens next. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, and also, yes, and also I wanted to add is because of the real strict regulations out there and everything else that's come out in the last 15 years that really put a damper on this trucking industry, because the rates have fallen drastically.
The rates of what you're being paid?
Yes, yes. And I don't know whether, see, the last time you were in Nashua, I believe, my buddy John here handed you a packet of information.
Yeah.
Did you ever read that?
I started to read it and I passed it on to my staff, as he mentioned that you guys were going to be going to Washington, D.C. to start looking at passing legislation to help be able to protect those of you who are working in this industry.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate, we'll grab that from you before we go. The work that you're doing to raise more awareness about the challenges that you all are facing. Look, I think that this is a big topic, and I'm not going to claim to have the answer in every single respect on this, but I think one area that can and will help those who are making this transition is a universal basic income. I think that will help provide a layer of economic security for those like yourselves who may be faced with this serious and massive change in your lives about what happens next and where do you go? How do you transfer these skills to something else, and what other opportunities are going to be available for you? I've talked to some other folks who are in a similar position as yourself, have gone through some of these things with people in my home state of Hawaii who spent their entire careers working on the sugar plantations in our state. Well, just in the last few years, the very last sugar plantation in our state shut down. The sugar mill closed. And so they were given some money for transition assistance, but for a lot of them, they're like, oh, okay, well, you can go and get retrained. But, you know, for someone who's 40, 50, 65 years old, they're thinking, what kind of retraining am I going to go do? And so we've got to get to just the reality of the situation and recognize in some ways the inevitability of what's coming, but making sure that we are standing up for our brothers and sisters and walking together through this process. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. First
Hi.
of all, welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
I have to say, if I were from Hawaii, I'd probably rather be there in December, but
I love my country. That's why I'm here.
I want to ask a serious question related to your vote on impeachment that took place recently, because as most people in the room know, you had a very unique vote. You didn't toe the party line. You voted present on both articles of impeachment. And the question I have for you is, if there was incontrovertible evidence of a high crime or misdemeanor, would you have voted yes on those articles of impeachment?
Yeah. This is part of the problem, though, is that throughout this process, it was and continues to be extremely partisan. And this is something that the founders warned against in the Federalist Papers, that the process, they feared that the process would result in a conclusion that was based on the strength of one party over another rather than an objective assessment of innocence or guilt. And that such an outcome would only further divide our country. This is why I voted present, to take a stand for our country, to take a stand for the people, and that we can and should defeat Donald Trump for his multiple wrongdoings and abuses of power, and defeat him and throw him out of office there so that we can come together as a country and move forward together. It's also why I introduced a censure resolution that listed many other areas that were not included in any impeachment articles or even discussed throughout that whole process of decisions that Donald Trump has made that were clearly unconstitutional and illegal, taking military action, dropping bombs in another country without congressional approval, vetoing a war powers resolution from Congress to stop supporting Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen. There are many other areas that I think should have been discussed, but weren't. And given the reality of the situation, I do not want to see Donald Trump further emboldened and strengthened as he will be. As the Senate will exonerate Trump, they will proclaim his innocence, and he'll then take that message across the country. And unfortunately, we're likely to see his support grow as a result of that.
Just a quick follow-up. So by the absence of your yes vote, does that mean you believe there was not any incontrovertible evidence?
I'm saying that the process was flawed. The entire process was flawed, which is why I could not in good conscience vote either yes or no. Trump has committed many acts of wrongdoing that I believe have made our country less safe and not serve the interests of the American people. It's why I'm so committed to defeating him and working to earn the support of Americans across the country so that we can remove him from office in November of 2020.
But none rising to the high crime or misdemeanor level.
The problem is with the process. That's the issue. And if the process itself is flawed, then we aren't really able to have a clear look at what levels and what has he done and what should have and could have been included. And that was why I chose to take the vote that I did. Thank you. Let's take one from this side. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the things that often precede these foreign regime change wars, and that's the covert actions taken by our government. A lot of people don't know that in 1949 in Syria, the United States backed a coup, and ironically enough, the guy who wrote the Afghanistan papers in the Washington Post, Craig Whitlock, he also wrote an article on April 17th, 2011, about the United States involvement in Syria in 2006. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on stopping these covert actions to overthrow governments.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So often the stories that we hear in the news about some of these wars, regime change wars, whether they are using military means or covert means through the CIA, or this modern day siege tactic of draconian sanctions to try to overthrow a government. The backstory is often not told, and we don't often find out what's really happened until maybe sometimes decades later, as happened with Iran and the CIA's role in overthrowing Mossadegh. At that time, that was a regime change war that a lot of people didn't know the U.S. was involved in until many, many years later when those documents were declassified. And I think that's really what's at issue here is my position that the United States should not try to play this role of being the police of the world. And we should not be in the business of going and overthrowing dictators that we don't like, even when under the guise of humanitarianism, because when we look throughout history in many different parts of the world, as our country has done this, it's actually resulted in more suffering and struggles for the people in those countries. And it's undermined the interests of our country, whether we're talking about in recent past, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. You can go on and on down the list, and you see how there's some hypocrisy there, because some dictators, the United States says, well, we've got to go and overthrow this evil dictator, but there are other dictators in other countries that the United States props up and supports and even calls allies and partners. So this is something that, that I will end as president, end this long-standing practice of regime change and nation building, and instead focus on these decisions about when and where our military takes action, or our role in engaging with other countries based on what's in the best interest of our country and our national security, and really having the foresight to look at what are the consequences down the line of those actions that we are taking, and will they actually help people in other countries, or will it hurt? That's something that doesn't happen often enough. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi. First, I want to say that I think you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
My question is about how are you going to deal with foreign leaders who don't take women like at
seriously?
like women, yeah. Yeah,
That's
how
a
are you
good
going to deal
question.
with that as a president?
That's a good question. This is something I've actually dealt with before. Not obviously as president or in the political capacity, but during my second deployment to the Middle East, I deployed as a platoon leader, and one of our platoon's missions was to conduct training, counterterrorism training with the Kuwaiti Army. And so as the platoon leader, I was the lieutenant, I had my sergeant, and we brought some of our soldiers. We went to their camp to begin this training. And from the outset, I was told, well, they don't allow women onto their camp. Obviously, I had a mission. I went anyway. And the guard at the gate who looked at our ID cards, he was a little puzzled when he looked at me, but he waved us on through. And then as we went and kind of went down the line and started meeting the Kuwaiti soldiers that we'd be training, half of them completely did not acknowledge that I existed at all. They wouldn't shake my hand, they wouldn't make eye contact. It was as though I were invisible to them, simply because I'm a woman. And the way that I treated this whole situation was, look, I get their cultural background and differences and whatever it is where they're coming from, but I knew what my mission was, and I let my actions speak louder than anything else. And so we went, we did this training. We did it a few days a week. We went and we showed them how to shoot their firearms. We showed them how to conduct basic counterterrorism tactics, how to clear buildings, how to deal with civil disobedience and riots and all these different things. And what I found was that as time went on, they saw me not as a woman with whatever their preconceived notions were, but as a fellow soldier who they grew to respect because of the experience and the leadership that I brought to the table. And what this resulted in was on graduation day, when they were done with their training course, they all gathered together, not in a room not unlike this, and their commander, who's a very conservative Muslim man, he called me up to the front in front of all of his soldiers, and he presented me with a plaque, an award for appreciation for the training that I and my soldiers had given to his unit. And as we left, there was someone else who was there who'd been working with these guys for a long time. He just said, Tulsi, I hope you understand what just happened, what it took for this commander to recognize a woman in front of his subordinates, in front of his soldiers, and what kind of a historic thing that was. So whatever the obstacles are, whoever it is that I'm dealing with, it is my practice to say, okay, my actions and my leadership will allow me to be able to overcome the obstacles that others may place before us. People will see through that I mean business and that I will not be detracted away from my mission of working for and representing our country with strength and with pride. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I just have both a comment and a question. First, my comment was just thank you for helping bring down Kamala Harris's campaign. We really dodged a bullet with that one. My question was, you emphasized being a uniter-in-chief, kind of uniting the country across partisan lines. I know one of your biggest issues is ending foreign wars and also protecting civil liberties. And I know there are a lot of Republicans who, both in Congress and just in the country in general, who agree with that kind of goal. So I want to know what your favorite Republican in Congress has been to work with on that issue in the spirit of that question.
Thank you. That's a really good question. You know, I have worked with a lot of my Republican colleagues on a lot of different issues. You mentioned civil liberties. I worked a lot with, he's now retired, but former Congressman Trey Gowdy on issues related to civil liberties and privacy. I've worked with, he's now an independent, but Congressman Justin Amash and Congressman Tom Massey, now passed away Congressman Walter Jones on issues related to ending presidential wars, respecting the Constitution and the role that Congress has to be the body that decides whether or not to declare war. I've worked with a Republican colleague in Florida, Congressman Brian Mast, who is also a combat veteran, who lost 3 limbs in his service as an EOD tech on veterans-related issues, something that we're currently working on that has to do with making sure that our generation of post-9/11 veterans does not have to deal with what our Vietnam veterans faced in Agent Orange, as so many of our generation of veterans have been exposed to toxic burn pits, and many suffering and struggling with rare cancers and really terrible respiratory illnesses because of that exposure. I've worked with Congressman Will Hurd. I've worked with a lot of different people in Congress on a lot of different issues, finding those areas where we can find agreement and common ground and really present that united front to the American people and saying, hey, look, as divided as things are, we have great opportunities to come together to be able to tackle some of the greatest issues of our time. And on those issues where we disagree, we still respect each other and we still maintain friendships because of that foundation of respect. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Robbie. We have a problem with politicians, well, people taking positions of power in government, and then they become very rich. Mm-hmm. And
I've always wondered how that happens.
Yes, maybe they don't have, you know, the 200K a year, maybe somewhere around there, and then they become very rich. I mean, would you support something like all congressmen, women, senators, presidents, etc., and apparently their family members too, to get like yearly or every 2 years they get audited by, you know, like independent parties? Because if something like that happened, I think we'd see big changes in how politicians push, you know, foreign aid to other countries over the homeland. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. This is a really important issue. You know, I talked a little bit earlier about this pay-to-play culture in Washington and this revolving door that we see between members of Congress and senior staffers who work across different industries in Washington. Very often will go from spending some time in this public service arena, and it is and must be public service, but then leaving and getting big payouts, working in the industries that we're supposed to be exercising oversight over, whether it was, you know, a committee of jurisdiction for a member of Congress, or a staffer working for the FCC or the SEC or the FDA. Go down the list of acronyms there where people will then go and work and get a big paycheck from the industry that they were supposed to be regulating. So yes, there must be transparency in not only where members of Congress and their spouses are getting their income from, are they abusing their position of influence and getting personally, financially benefiting from those relationships. But I think we have to go even farther, because right now already there's an annual form that every one of us must fill out that is a financial disclosure form. So you could look it up for every single member of Congress and their spouse to look at, okay, where are you getting your income from? What stocks are you investing in? And we've seen there's a congressman who actually just resigned because he was, I don't remember the details, but the bottom line is he was in a position of power on a committee. Turns out he was a major shareholder in a company, and he was encouraging other members of Congress to invest in the company, and then made decisions in Congress that would benefit that company. I think it was a pharmaceutical company. I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Chris Collins, exactly. And he's being, I think, indicted for it now. So making sure that that transparency is there and the accountability is there is important. I don't think members of Congress should be allowed to invest in stocks, period. I don't think that they should be in a position where they can personally benefit off of those decisions that are made. Because whether you're on the committee of jurisdiction or not, every one of us ultimately has to vote on bills related to every single sector in our economy, directly or indirectly, and no one should be in a position of being able to benefit from that. I think members of Congress should not be allowed to become lobbyists after they leave Congress. Neither should senior staffers. Closing this revolving door in our government, I think, will do a lot towards reducing that level of corruption and influence that is being exploited by too many people in positions of power for their own personal financial gain. Just like we see, how many teachers, do we have any teachers who are here today or former teachers? Thank you for your service. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, law enforcement officers, school counselors, mental health professionals. When you go down this list, these are people who choose to serve. They're not getting into these work, right? I mean, you didn't get into this for the money, did you? Yeah, because there's not much money there. You get into it because you love teaching and you want to serve and you want to help our kids. Those who get into public service must be in it to serve and not be using that as a stepping stone or a way for them to financially exploit that position of service for their own personal gain.
We have time for one more question.
Yes.
Okay, so I've just learned about you recently,
Okay.
and from what I heard, you have my support.
Thank you.
But before that, I felt like I needed to settle for the other people that I knew about, like the big names like Warren and Sanders. So my question is, how do you plan to stand up against these people that are more like household names compared to you?
I'm counting on you to help me do that. And thank you. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your question, because this is real. I'm not as famous as some of the best-known candidates in the race, and I think a lot of the national polls, especially that people are seeing, are really more of an indication of who is most famous and well-known, rather than an indication of voters having equal amounts of information on every candidate and then making their decisions accordingly, right? And so I appreciate you taking the time to learn more and to come today, and I'm grateful to have your support. But our challenge and our opportunity as a grassroots people-powered campaign is challenge. We've got to get better known, and we've got to get the word out to others. And what we're finding is that the more we're able to do that, the more our support grows. And so for our campaign, we are using every platform possible to do that. We're holding town halls like this every single day. going out into different towns and communities and reaching out to people. I've seen a couple of people who I saw earlier today in the coffee shop and invited you to come. Thank you for coming. And this is where I just want to ask every single one of you for help. I want to hand the mic over to one of our incredible volunteers, Matt Gravel, who hosted, he invited about 150 of his closest friends and family to his house. And he's going to share with you some ways that you can join our movement. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. All right. I actually recognize some of the people who were actually at my house. So as Tulsi said, she doesn't accept PAC money. And what that means is this is not a bought and sold candidate. That means she's counting on people like me, people like you, to help her get her message out, spread the word, and get her elected as President of the United States. So what can you do? You can, they're on your seats, you guys had pledge cards, and this is what they're for. You can commit to talking to 2 people about what you heard here today and getting them to watch one of her town halls on YouTube or Twitter. You can defend her on Twitter when someone says something ridiculous about her that doesn't make any sense. And it is true. And I love doing it personally. And there's also, you can get bumper stickers and lawn signs, especially you, right, the new one here. If you live on a main road, that is a perfect opportunity to get visibility for Tulsi. When I'm driving around town, I see your signs, I see a couple of Pete here and there. I want to rip them out of the ground, but I don't. I would never do it. I just look at them not in a favorable way. But I see Tulsi's all over the place, and I would love to see more. We want to see them all down the streets. You can sign up to do that. They're free. They'll come and install them for you. You can host a party at your house like I did. You don't have to invite 150 people. I just wanted to kind of put her on the map, and it was quite the moment. I was a little shocked. I actually have a big house, and it did not look so big when these people were in it. But I was happy to have them, and it just made me feel really good. And we had a great conversation, and we've developed a friendship since, and I'm always honored when she asks me to introduce her or talk about the pledge cards, because I'm a person who hated politics my whole life. So the fact that she has gotten me involved and drawn me in just speaks volumes to the kind of candidate she has to be, because otherwise I would have just ignored her like everybody else. There's something different about this woman, and she's fantastic. And we need her to be President of the United States. Do what you can to help her. You can turn these pledge cards in at the back. You can talk to Vince, like I said. They will come and install any yard signs you want in your house. You can get a banner, whatever you want. She will get it done for you. She is here for you, for all of us. Let's get her there, guys.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Election day is right around the corner here. How many of you know when it is? February 11th. February 11th. Now you know. It is right around the corner. One thing that I really, really appreciate about New Hampshire voters is that you think for yourself. That as you know, the cable news, you'll hear all of these different things. You'll see different polls saying different things coming out almost every single day of the week. That everywhere we go, we meet voters like yourselves who think for yourselves, and you know the responsibility that you have as first in the nation as you consider the vote that you will choose to cast, of who you would like to see move forward in this presidential campaign. I appreciate very much the seriousness with which you take this responsibility, and appreciate your consideration in being here tonight and considering casting your vote for me in this election on February 11th. As Matt said, you've got those pledge cards. I just want to invite every single one of you to join us. If you've made up your mind tonight, please do fill out that information. There are ways, small and large, that you can help spread this message with others. But even if you haven't made up your mind tonight, even if you're still thinking and looking at the different candidates, that's okay too. I still encourage you to share what you heard here, share our conversation with those in your family or coworkers or friends, and increase this discussion and dialogue within our community as we head into the final stretch of the last 5 weeks of the primary here in New Hampshire. Most of all, I personally just want to thank every single one of you for giving me your time. It is the most valuable thing that every one of us has in our lives that you can never get back. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm so grateful to know you. I'm be able to stick around if any of you want to come up and say hello or take a picture. We'll have the opportunity to do that. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Aloha.
Flashcards can go in the back, and we're going to start a picture line coming from the left and exiting this way.
I'm gonna get the girls
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good one.
You managed being in the front row, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Thanks
Fred.
for being here, Fred. I appreciate you.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Hi, how are you?
I just want to let you know, I voted Republican for years, and I'm totally in your corner. This is the first time I've ever voted Democrat
Thank
in my
you.
life.
That means so much to me. I really appreciate
I
it.
really hope the media can be a little bit more fair to you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Really appreciate your support.
You guys will just exit this way when we're done. Sure.
Hi, how are you? What's your name?
Amanda.
Amanda, nice to meet you.
How are you?
Hey, good.
We
What's
voted
your
for
name?
Trump, but I really like you.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you're here.
You said we did?
Yeah, we did.
We are.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. And what's your name? Ava. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
All right, 1, 2, 3. All right.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Really awesome.
Have a good night. I'm glad you came. Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right.
Thank you so much. How are you? Thank you.
Thanks for
very
coming.
much
Thanks for
being here.
coming.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. It's retail politics.
That's right. It's the best way.
That's right. That's right.
Have a
Thanks
good
again.
one.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks. There we go. Thank you.
I know. This will go to the national office.
Right here, right here.
I meant what I said. I have so much respect for you all. And
I thank you
love
so
what
much
you're
for
doing.
bringing it up without me even asking. That is really.
I make it a point whenever I see the red
wonderful.
shirts.
Yeah, we're here. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
And
so
as I said, it will go to the national office. So we'll send it all out so we know where you stand.
Yeah.
You are.
Thank you for making it. Appreciate you.
I'm just gonna help you down.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell me your name.
James.
Thank you, James. I appreciate you coming and for giving me your support and that you are able to vote for.
I'm glad I can finally find a candidate I can actually like.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
All right, right here, James. All right.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Share us far and wide.
I
All
will.
right. Take care. Thank you. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Scott Spencer.
Good,
Pleasure
Scott.
to meet you.
Thanks for
Most
being
of my
here
family are from Kaneohe.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow. Have you been there? You've grown up there?
Many times. My dad still lives out here. His dad lives in Hawaii. So.
Okay, very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, Hawaii is always awesome.
Absolutely.
Even with our challenges.
That it is.
Still
That
the
it
best
is.
place in the world.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for spending time with us.
1, 2, 3.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night. Mahalo to you.
Hi, Jack over here.
Hi.
I'm Bill Jones. I really appreciate the straightforwardness and the honesty.
Thank you.
Yeah, the votes were really my fault.
Appreciate that. That's huge. Thank you so much.
Right here, 1, 2, 3. All right, gotcha.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a happy new year. Thank you.
Anywhere on the screen. All right.
Hi. How How are you?
You're such a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
It's so nice to hear everything that you have to say.
I really appreciate that.
And you will have my vote if you get there, but you're the only Democrat I ever vote for.
Thank you. Well, consider voting for me in the primary so
I
we
will.
can get there.
I will.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, right here. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Thank you so
Good luck.
much. Have a good night.
You too.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, we did.
A little bit.
Okay.
Don't be intimidated by this. Not that thick. It's only
Okay.
5 pages.
I've
The
got
rest
an
of it's
hour
just
drive ahead
evidence
of me,
of
so I'm going to read this in the car on the way out.
Short to the point
Yeah.
on the industry.
Yeah.
And that's why we're over here trying to find out if you get really elected, what you're going to actually do for us.
Sure.
Because our business is falling right apart. And a lot of fun. Now it's a jail.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It's the issue that we're being replaced with autonomy. You know, you brought that up earlier. Autonomy. So security issues are involved with that. Job loss is involved with that. And when the hell are they going to start putting people's first initiatives back in place? When's the Democratic Party going to stand back up again and protect the jobs of the American people? Why are we going to replace 40% of Americans' jobs due to autonomy?
And also
There's something called a social contract, correct?
And
Which is
also
a law. We're natural people. We deserve to have jobs. We don't deserve to be put aside. I know the UN has to think about working and have the choice of work, on their Bill of Rights. Other than that, you can be supplemented if the job isn't involved. And that's where we get all this welfare crap like that comes from. However, the issue is we don't want to be supplemented. We want to work.
And also,
I think you can understand.
And one more thing is the electronic logs. We're on computer logs. They're getting hacked. There's no security.
That's a serious
Essentially,
concern.
the Constitution right has been violated also. And we need somebody to stand up and help us fix it.
Thanks for the work you're doing. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. You too. Have a safe New Year. Thank you.
Contact me if you need to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I know.
How are you? Thank you, sir. What's your name? Lee?
Originally from Kenya.
Wow.
Okay. You got my book.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Take too
That
much
means a
time.
lot to me. No, thank you very much, Lee. Awesome. Have a good one. Safe New Year. Hope to see you again. Thank you.
You're gonna come back when you win, huh?
Yes, of course.
I live just down the road.
Okay. You should come and join us on election night. Okay, good. Thank you, Lee.
Just wanted to say thank you. And we really, from the minute I heard the debate, we watched the debates, and it just, there's something just genuine about you that we really liked.
Oh, yeah. I will be there, definitely. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Of course you will. I know she will.
Sorry, just 1 second. Thank you
Real
so
quick.
much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's great to see
It's
you.
nice to see you in person.
Yeah, I know. It's much better.
Photographer.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate that you came back.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, it was wonderful.
One, two, three.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
You take one with the Trump supporter.
Of course, of course.
You had all my kids before.
So funny.
I'm the dad of all those girls.
I know.
Oh, you cut out the shirt? Come on. Do it right.
Oh, I didn't see it.
That's all right.
There you go.
That's
Thank you.
okay. I know they'll keep you in line, Dad.
The girls as well. Thank you. I do like a lot of what you stand for.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good night. Thanks, you guys. Bye. Hi, how are you?
My name is Miranda. I'm actually Matt's granddaughter. He
Oh, wow.
invited me over.
Cool. I'm so glad to meet you.
I'm so happy to meet you. I just heard about you. We were yang before, but we were like, this just sounds so much just needed.
That means a lot to me.
Very nice to meet you,
Thank
Max.
you both. Nice to meet you.
Look at on the other side.
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for your support. Just real quick, sorry, we're going to
Yeah, no worries.
What is your opinion on the concentration camps in China right now?
Gosh, that's a big topic. It's a very tough situation that I think we don't have enough information about. From what I've heard and from what I've seen, obviously, I think the way China is approaching this situation is not the right answer.
I thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, how are you?
Good. Told me to come back.
Yes. I'll give you one more. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Do the last words?
No, I'm sorry. We're already
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. A year and a half ago, I've never been in politics, and saw you on Joe Rogan and
Cool.
became a follower.
Thank you.
Aloha, and good luck to everything.
Support means a lot. Aloha to you. Thank you. Hey.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much. Hi.
I wanted to ask a question, but there was no time.
I know, I'm sorry. We're going to have another town hall tomorrow. You should come.
Where's that one?
Thank you. Tomorrow I believe we're in Salem.
Oh, Salem? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go on my website or my Facebook page and have the details
Definitely
there.
will.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
How
no
are
picture.
you?
I just wanted to say thanks for the macadamia thing.
Did you try
nice.
it?
No, I'm going to try it
Okay,
tonight.
good.
Nice
All right.
touch.
Yes.
So keep up the positive message, and just wanted to wish you well.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your support. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you. How are you?
My name is Billy Anderson, and I drove all the way from Fort Smith, Arkansas to be here tonight.
Crap.
And I'm nervous as all hell because I came all the way up here to do this.
Okay.
And I was wondering if I deserve your consideration.
Okay, I will take a look.
And,
I got a bit of a drive ahead of me tonight, but I will take a look.
all right, and there's one document short in there, and I didn't want to put it in there because it would detract from what's in there. It's understanding suicide. But I would like to have a chance to give that to you later.
Okay.
It's okay?
Okay. Yes.
Maybe if you can contact me if you decide to.
Okay. All right. I hope. Are you not driving back home tonight? Are you?
I'm not.
Okay. Good. You stick around for a little while.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Be safe and thanks for bringing this. I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Hi, Chelsea. I'm
How are
John
you?
O'Brien.
Nice
Very
to meet
nice to meet you. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for your military service, paramount. Okay? And I also want to thank you for talking like a Democrat that I know. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I spent the first 24 years of my life in Massachusetts in the Democrat Party that I was raised in. The last name's O'Brien, Irish Catholic, Democrat, Heritage, and French Catholic working class. That party began its death with the murder of John Kennedy, as far as myself and others are concerned, to the point where it has sunk down into socialism. Too much into socialism. So thank you for talking like a real, strong conservative. And thank you for taking down the television program. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. The truth is a powerful thing.
It's very good to meet you. Very sweet.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your support. Hello, sir. How are you?
Thank you. Nice to meet you. I am conservative, but you were the only Democratic candidate that's running that I could vote for this time. So, and I do, since I live in New Hampshire, we have great flexibility as to whom. But I must admit, especially given your military background, and I totally agree with you. I'm really against all these foreign entanglements, military entanglements. Well, it's kind of interesting that President Trump has been, president in recent times that hasn't initiated any new ones. But my question is, I'm really concerned about your position in the JCPOA. It seems like I wouldn't think you'd be naive about the military threat that Iran poses to us, being the major terrorist supporter in the world.
Here's the issue.
And that was a very flawed agreement.
It was very flawed, but the choice between a flawed agreement and no agreement and a nuclear armed Iran, I chose the flawed agreement.
There will be a nuclear armed Iran anyway.
Well, the whole point is choosing the flawed agreement, delaying any ability for Iran to be able to develop or acquire a nuclear weapon, and simultaneously working to strengthen and improve
but
it.
Because of the
every single day that we go by without the Iran nuclear agreement, they are a day closer to developing a nuclear
But because
weapon.
of the inspection failures, I mean, they are
The
allowed to
inspections
continue.
regime was not perfect, but
Right.
multiple intelligence agencies from many different countries, even outside of the IAEA, confirmed that they were not developing a nuclear weapon in the years since the deal. So it's imperfect, but we need to get back into it and work to strengthen it, because the only alternative is war.
And
I think we have the opportunity to avoid and prevent
the
that.
Europeans were anxious to do it because they wanted to sell Iran goods.
Well, they're also concerned about a nuclear armed Iran as well.
Well, no, but I think they recognize the problem too. And it just reminds me so much of what Karl Marx said, that the capitalists will sell us the rope that we hang them with, and that's what I think about the Iran deal. But thank you very much. I will seriously consider that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Good luck.
Have a good one. Safe New Year's.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, I know you're running short of time.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I support you 100%.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thanks for all your support.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello
We gotta
again.
update our picture. Yeah, I know. Thank you so much. You're a powerful man, Nick.
I'm trying.
Keep it up. It's
Absolutely,
working.
yeah.
It's working. Thank you.
We can jump in the same
Hey,
picture.
yes,
We'll get you out of here.
Thank you.
Oh, can you back left?
Too close.
Zoom out. It's a Zoom dance.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Service.
Same to you.
Thank you very much. Have a safe New Year's. Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Hi. Is this your daughter?
This is my daughter, Elsa.